I am so happy with how this looks for the Rangers. We have a pitcher, Jack Leiter, and he is a dude.
And while I do think his hitting is worse than Derek Jeter, it's not that far off.
You're not mentioning 2006. You can mention the other people, not 2006.
Oh, just because I bought the best soap doesn't mean your room's going to be clean. It just leaves it to where I don't believe that the Canadians had a shot.
I really don't like the Clippers just kind of sending it in when they're like...
Hi, this is Kelly Forbes with the Dallas Stars, and you're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NHL Opinions of the Week. I'm Kevin, and I'm joined by the man that joins me, was the first to do it, and I follow up as it was close. We both got our NBA and NHL predictions right back-to-back years as the Panthers won the Stanley Cup. And boy, was that, I was starting to feel nervous at the end when it was like 30 seconds. Like, wow, can they really do it? And the man that I will be discussing this with, Austin.
Yeah, it wasn't really the last 30 seconds. It was more the last 5 minutes. Those last 30 seconds were a lot of chaotic things happening, and Oilers never really got a good chance in the last minute, really. But the 5 to 2 minute mark, wow, that was some great hockey, some great chances back and forth. McDavid is the first player since 2003 to win the Conn Smythe while losing the Stanley Cup Final. He had a great series, historic series. Unfortunately for him, and I don't really blame him because he's played so well these series and these playoffs, but he had no points the last 2 games. I'm sure some people will bring that up, but still, he was amazing. He had 2 4-point performances to keep the season alive for the Oilers before that, when it was a 3-0 series and a 3-1 series, or a 3-1 series and 3-2 series. But what a game, what a performance by the Panthers to really shut this down. Sergei Bobrovsky had a much better game these past 2 games than he had during those comeback period for the Oilers. Bobrovsky's now won 2 Vezinas and a Stanley Cup champion. Or he is a Stanley Cup champion. It's crazy. And like you said, Kevin, you go back to back in hockey. I go back to back in the NBA. We're staying close. We're just switching off who wins our postseason championships.
Yeah, but as a channel, I think it's good. We're getting a lot of predictions right. The thing I will say about it turned into be a very exciting watch because it was 3-0 and we've talked about sweeps. And I tuned in for game 6. I finally got over the Stars losing. And then, yeah, it just seems like I don't really blame McDavid. I just blame the reason I think is the Panthers are just such a well-built team. They don't rely on one player. Like, Tkachuk did not play well.
He had some good games. Game 5 and 6 especially. But the thing really is, I think McDavid just ran out of gas. If you looked at the last 2 minutes of that game, they were just dying out there on the ice. And you'd love to see that from a star player, but at the same time, you know how hard it is to push through that. The fact that as Bobrovsky's diving around, they don't get a goal somehow.
Yeah. That is
remarkable.
That was a wild sequence.
It was, and usually that results in a goal, and this time it didn't. It's a great series, and the Panthers, I don't think there's been a team with more pressure on them heading into a game than this game right here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of one. I think there's more pressure on this Panthers team than there was on the Warriors in 2016, mainly because this is 3-0. I don't care if the Warriors were the greatest team ever the regular season. This is a reverse sweep in the final. Like, that is, and it's not like the Warriors. The Warriors had won the championship the year before. The Panthers had never won a championship. This is for their first title, and they lose it in a reverse sweep. That can't happen, and it didn't. Credit to all their best players. Carter Verhaeghe ties to Tkachuk for the most playoff goals in the season for the Panthers. And while it was an up and down series, obviously, it being 3-0 and then 3-0 the other way, and then the Panthers ended up getting it done, it was enjoyable. These were great playoffs. I'd say the playoffs for the NHL, again, were better than the NBA in general, in a non-biased view. I know Kevin may like them a little bit more because the Mavs made the finals, but I would say that overall, the NHL playoffs were better.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to the point of looking back. Like, I'm thinking about what an exciting series it was in the first round when you had Vegas versus the Stars. Stars come back 2-0. Then you also have Colorado, Winnipeg, Colorado Stars as well. That was a fun series. And then you also have the craziness with the Hurricanes and Rangers, I believe.
Yeah, those craziest there was obviously the Boston Maple Leafs. That was a great game 7 that came down to obviously the wire in overtime. So I think it was a good playoffs. I think the NBA was good. It's been a while since I thought it was absolutely great playoffs. Mainly just Boston was so good. They only lost 3 games all postseason, and it's really hard to beat a team when they're losing that few games. But I am happy sort of with how the season went. I'm happy for Florida. I'm not a Florida fan at all, but it's a team I like to see win it.
Yeah, and it's as someone just saw like their team win the World Series for the first time ever, it would have been, I almost think, like 2011 levels.
It would have Kevin. Reverse sweep is so much worse.
But like that would have been awful, but they don't have to deal with that. They get their first team. You think about Paul Maurice. I loved the just like seeing the emotion out of Kachuk on that post-game interview. You could just like see how he was so shocked and they were happy. I would like to talk about McDavid winning. It's just like McDavid is great. It's just weird to me that a losing guy won. I know he said
in
2003.
This is the 6th time. It's the 2nd time for a skater, meaning a non-goalie, but it's the 6th time overall, so it's not unheard of. Again, 2003 is not that long ago.
Yeah,
you and I were both alive when it happened,
that's
so
true.
it's not unheard of. And I do think it was the right choice. McDavid played amazing during these playoffs to the point to where I don't think you can necessarily take it away from him. I think he was the most valuable player in the playoffs, and it's not even a series MVP; it's a playoff MVP, and that's where you got to say, okay, McDavid was kind of dragging this team, and there was nobody on the Panthers I thought was overwhelmingly deserving of it. Now, if Barkov had a couple crazy games and they ended up sweeping or winning in 5, maybe. If Bobrovsky had another after game 1 where he had a shutout, if he had another shutout or 2 other shutouts, maybe we're talking about Bobrovsky. But I think it was the right choice. The NBA is a little bit different. In the NBA, if you are the best player in a series, almost always you're going to win it. So, like this time, I don't believe Luka should have won Finals MVP. I think that it going to a Boston player makes sense. There's been a couple times where I thought maybe they give it to LeBron in the 2015 Finals, or maybe in the 2017 Finals, or maybe a couple series where other guys could have won out on losing teams. But hockey would seem like the sport where it's more likely because, again, you can't control everything as just a McDavid. It is weird still. I completely agree because I think some people were waiting. Some people had their phones out. Some Oilers fans had their phones out after they announced the Conn Smythe winner. And I'm like, do they expect McDavid to come out to accept the trophy?
Yeah.
And I'm like, there is me personally, there is no way I'm going back out there. There's no way. Yeah. So it is a little bit awkward. There is that awkward silence. They obviously booed it, which I makes sense. It's
as
what
a fan.
Fans,
yeah.
I get it. But at the same time, I think it was the right choice at the end of the day. And that's what matters. I'd rather them get it right than them just be a homer and pick that's the one on the winning team. Always.
Yeah, it's true. And McDavid is great, and you can see that in the playoffs. And you mentioned the 4-point game. I don't really blame him for this loss. It's really a team sport. And I would like to say, what are like there are 2 different goalies? Because it seemed like Stuart Skinner, once it reaches like game 4, he becomes so much better.
Stuart Skinner had a great playoffs, especially after he got pulled. The second half of the Canucks series, and then basically all the Dallas series, and then the majority of the Panther series, he was great, and I partially hated on him. I think in the Dallas case, they were making him look better than he was, but I have to give credit where it's due. He played amazing. Bobrovsky also had some up and down performances, and then when he needed it, he got it. Goaltending wasn't the issue here, I think, for either side. That's not the reason why either team lost in Game 7. Really close series. I would like to say that now Corey Perry has lost 4 of the last 5 Stanley Cups. He lost with Dallas, Montreal, Tampa, then an off year, and then now with the Oilers. 2 of those teams being from Canada, as he's from Canada. He's already talked about how now his son is old enough. He'd love to win one with his son, and it being in Canada would be even better. And it is insane. He's also 2 teams in the West, 2 teams in the East, 2 teams from Canada, 2 teams in the U.S., all different colors, basically. It is, I guess technically Edmonton is blue and Tampa's blue, but when I think of Edmonton, I think of orange still. But it is.
It's a weird stat.
It is, and it's unheard of in the majority of sports, especially in today's day and age. There's a lot more teams, and the fact that he's been on so many great teams, and he's played in those series, so it's not like he hasn't contributed. But it's weird to see. I'm really interested to see if he can do it again, obviously, but we'll leave that for next year. What else do you have?
Yeah, I think at the end, like Edmonton was pushing, but it just seemed like the Panthers kept fighting defensively because a lot of the time was spent in their defensive zone. They were able to just fight through it and not let them score. So that was something that jumped out to me. You could just feel the energy. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what happens with these 2 teams. I would like to say, I think you have to grade the win for the Tkachuk. Like, you got to say they did a great job in the Tkachuk trade because they made the Stanley Cup final twice and they finally won one, which I think that's the goal when you're doing a trade like that. When you're going from one of the best teams ever to we're going to trade a big guy that I remember talking about Jonathan Huberdeau on this show, and we're going to trade for Tkachuk on the Flames, and it ends up working out in the second year of that trade. So that's something to me that's a key thing. He wasn't the reason they won. I know I had him for the Conn Smythe winner, but I do think there's a correlation there, but just kind of shows you the risk in making trades like that. Like the benefits of doing it, then imagine if they didn't win it.
Yeah. Like I said, what a series. Chris Knobloch and the Oilers, a valiant comeback. It has to be a very tough spot to be down 3-0. And they rallied the troops and they never gave up. And I like to give them a lot of credit for that.
I also would like to say one more thing. Is Chris Knobloch, you brought him up. We kind of questioned, like, why are you doing this when they fired him? Or at least I questioned them. And I think if you go, hey, you're going to be in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, I think you got to be like, that's a pretty good trade-off.
I completely agree. You make a great point. And I'd love to see if this is more than just a one-year wonder, because they still have issues, I think, with their team. While I do think the Panthers were the better team, and obviously hockey is such a sport that you don't necessarily need the better team to win sometimes.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine the flight. I think I saw people tweet about, like, what was the flight like for Game 6? Because, like, anything they had 4 tries. They finally got it in the 4th try. But anything can happen in the Game 7.
That's true, but I think another reason why they say it's the worst flight ever for a hockey team is how long it is, Kevin. It's a long flight, and it's a long flight, and you're just in the back of your head, you're thinking like
we've given up. We could have won like 3 times.
But I think those guys, they're professionals. I think they understand the moment, and every game's a new game for both teams.
Yeah.
And the Panthers eventually got it done. That's why they need to win the first 3.
Yeah, that's true. They just needed one. They got one, and I think you got to feel happy for the fans that got it, Paul Maurice too, and just all the guys on that team.
Yeah, congrats again to them. I think it was a great series. I'm excited already for next year.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see what happens in the offseason that's coming up, and just what I feel like Edmonton can like get better, because just like how I hated on their defense, I hated on Stuart Skinner, and they were able to make it to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final.
That's true, but a lot of these teams have been losing, Kevin. Haven't been making it back, besides Florida. So if you go Stars, Montreal, Tampa after they lost their last one, The Bruins after they lost their last one. It's hard to get back. It took Vegas 5 years to come back.
Mhm.
It's a tough road back. It's not easy, and there will be a lot of teams that are going to be gunning for that spot. There's a team in the West to go for, and they do have the players, though. I think you can't deny that having Draisaitl and McDavid is definitely a bonus.
Yeah, they just need to fill in the other pieces, which to me is the easier part. You have the guy. Like, you have an all-time great, one of the best players that can lead your team. It's just figuring out everything else. And I wonder what we're going to see this offseason from them. We'll keep them covered. I'll toss this over to you if you have any more final thoughts.
No, like I said, congrats to the Panthers, and I mean, again, congrats to the Oilers for bringing it back to a Game 7. I thought this series was going to be a bad one after Game 3, and they fought to the end. So.